The galaxy was not ready for Earth. For centuries, humans were seen as newcomers, a young race still learning to travel between stars. The great empires laughed at them, calling them weak, calling them fragile, calling them harmless. Humans were watched but never feared. They were ignored in councils, dismissed in negotiations, and treated as nothing more than background players in the stage of the galaxy. But deep in the void, far from alien eyes, Earth was working on something that no one expected. The silence before the reveal began when rumors first spread. Traders whispered that strange shadows had been seen near human space, shadows that moved against the light of stars. Ships that passed too close reported strange readings, scanners filled with static, engines flickered, power drained without reason. No one could explain it, and yet the reports grew louder. The galaxy began to ask questions. What was Earth hiding? The empires sent scouts to investigate, but many never returned. Those who came back told stories of the void itself coming alive, of darkness shaped like a warship, of fear that pressed into their minds. Of course, the council dismissed it all as lies. They believed humans were incapable of such power. But the silence was heavy, and fear was already spreading. Across alien fleets, soldiers whispered in private about a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen. They spoke of ships made from dark matter itself, ships that did not reflect light, ships that looked like shadows in space. The silence grew louder when Earth refused to answer questions. No message came, no explanation, no denial. It was as if humanity wanted the galaxy to wait, to watch, to grow nervous. The waiting was worse than war. Every day the council argued. Some said Earth had nothing, that it was all tricks, that humans were using fear as a shield. Others warned that humans were too quiet, and that silence meant danger. One by one, fleets began to move closer to the Sol system, ready for anything. They expected missiles, lasers, maybe even a new kind of shield. They did not expect what they saw. The reveal began when the stars themselves seemed to vanish. A massive shadow drifted into view, blocking entire constellations. At first the fleets thought it was an asteroid, but it moved too smoothly, too perfectly. Then came the outline. A shape that was not natural, a structure larger than any ship ever built. Its surface looked like liquid night, swallowing every beam of light around it. It was not only invisible, it was alive in the way it distorted the void. The silence deepened as every fleet went quiet. No one dared speak. No one dared fire. It was as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. For a long moment the ship did nothing, only floating in the darkness. But its presence was enough. The soldiers in their cockpits felt fear crawling in their bones. Commanders who had faced 100 wars could not steady their hands. Even the council members watching from secure stations felt cold sweat drip down their faces. They knew this was no ordinary ship. This was something different. This was something meant to end wars before they began. And this was only one ship. The silence broke only when a single transmission appeared across the fleets. No image, no sound, only a few words written in cold human language. Do not test us. That was all. No threats. No promises. Just a warning. And then the ship moved. Not fast, not aggressive, only a slow drift, but with every movement the stars bent around it. The scanners screamed, systems overloaded, weapons shut down without reason. Every alien captain knew that if the ship wished, it could erase them all in an instant. The silence returned, but it was no longer the silence of waiting. It was the silence of fear. Every empire watching now understood the truth. Earth was not weak. Earth was not harmless. Humanity had been hiding something that no one could fight. Dark matter warships had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had seen many warships before, but nothing like this. The first dark matter warship stood in the void like a shadow given form, its shape bending starlight, its surface darker than the emptiness around it. No signal came from the ship, no sound, no warning, only the weight of its presence pressing down on every fleet that watched. Alien captains whispered that it was not a machine but something alive, a creature pretending to be a warship. Sensors could not read it, scanners returned only errors, and every attempt to lock weapons onto its hull failed. The closer fleets tried to study it, the more their systems failed. Lights flickered, engines stuttered, weapons shut down without reason. One cruiser dared to move closer, engines burning bright. But the moment it crossed into the shadows reach, the ship lost power. Its lights went dark, its shields collapsed, and it drifted helplessly as if the void itself had swallowed its strength. Not a single shot was fired, not a single attack came from Earth's warship, yet the cruiser was dead, floating without life. Panic spread across the watching fleets. Commanders shouted orders, soldiers stared wide-eyed at the silent monster, and even the most battle-hardened captains felt fear grip their hearts. The council members watching from secure stations debated wildly, some claiming it was an illusion, others swearing it was the greatest weapon ever seen. One truth could not be denied: the warship was real, and it was stronger than anything in known space. What terrified them more was the question of numbers. If Earth had one, then surely they had more. If this was only the first, then what was waiting behind it in the shadows? Every empire leader asked themselves the same question, but no one spoke it aloud. The silence between fleets grew heavier, as if no one wanted to risk drawing the ship's attention. A strange hum filled the comms, not a voice but a vibration, low and unsettling, and for a moment it seemed the warship was listening. Some soldiers swore they heard whispers, words in their own languages, warning them to leave. Others claimed they saw shapes move across the hull, as if shadows had faces, as if the ship was watching them in return. Fear spread faster than light. Fleets that had arrived confident now found themselves backing away, their captains unwilling to test the thing that had disabled a cruiser without firing a weapon. Yet one empire, proud and arrogant, refused to accept the truth. Their flagship moved forward, weapons armed, commanders shouting that no human ship could stand against them. But as the ship advanced, the dark matter warship shifted slightly, a small turn of its massive shadowed frame, and the arrogant fleet froze. It was not an attack, not even a threat, but the movement felt deliberate, like a predator turning to watch its prey. The stars behind it vanished completely, its outline blotting out constellations like ink spilling across paper. The alien flagship halted, its weapons still glowing, but no shot was fired. Its crew felt the pressure of silence pressing down on them, a silence so heavy it crushed courage into dust. Then came the realization that chilled them to their bones. The warship had not revealed its weapons. It had not needed to. Its power was in its presence, its silence, its control of fear itself. Every second it stood there, the galaxy grew more certain that fighting it would mean death. The Council sent desperate messages to Earth, demanding explanation, demanding control, demanding something to calm the terror that was now spreading across star systems. But Earth remained silent, not one word, not one broadcast. The only answer the galaxy received was the dark warship floating like a shadow made of death. Across the fleets, soldiers began to ask themselves a forbidden question. What if Earth had always been planning this? What if the weak and harmless image of humanity had been a lie? What if this was their true face, a face hidden in darkness until the galaxy was too comfortable, too certain, too blind to stop them? The thought alone broke morale. Entire fleets began to drift back, choosing distance over pride. The arrogant empire's flagship slowly retreated as well, its glowing weapons dimming as fear replaced anger. And through it, all the warships said nothing, did nothing, only hovered in the dark like a storm waiting to strike. In the silence of that moment, the galaxy realized the truth. They were not watching the first battle of a war. They were watching a warning so strong that no one dared to ignore it. Earth had not only built a warship. They had built a weapon of silence, and the silence was more terrifying than fire. The council chamber was never silent, yet that day it was filled with fear. Leaders of great empires, races that had ruled the stars for centuries, sat frozen as the image of Earth's dark matter warship hovered on the central display. No one wanted to speak first. No one wanted to admit the truth. At last a voice broke the silence, sharp with anger, demanding that humanity explain themselves, demanding that Earth be summoned before the council to answer for this weapon. But the words sounded weak, even to those who spoke them. Another leader shouted that the ship must be destroyed before it multiplied, before Earth unleashed an entire fleet of them, but his voice trembled, betraying his fear. Arguments erupted, voices overlapping, leaders pounding the table, but behind their anger lay the same terror. They did not understand what they had seen. Reports from the disabled cruiser showed no weapon discharge, no energy signature, no sign of attack, yet the ship had been stripped of power as if the universe itself had turned against it. That was not war, that was control, and the galaxy did not know how to fight something that did not follow the rules of war. Panic spread quickly among the Council's messengers. Fleets sent updates every hour, and each report was worse. Soldiers were losing discipline, captains were retreating without orders, and entire squadrons refused to approach human space. The fear was not only in the chamber, it was spreading across the stars. One empire accused another of weakness, claiming they had fallen victim to human tricks. Another shouted that this was no trick, that the ship was a true dark matter construct, a thing beyond science, something that should not exist. Some leaders called for unity, to gather all fleets together and attack Earth with overwhelming numbers, but even as they spoke, none believed the plan would work. What good were numbers against shadows that bent starlight and silenced ships without a shot? The council chamber grew louder, filled with arguments that solved nothing. Old rivalries resurfaced, with empires blaming one another for giving humanity too much freedom, for allowing them to develop unchecked, for underestimating their potential. The more they argued, the more it became clear that fear was splitting them apart. Humanity had not fired a single weapon, yet the galaxy was already breaking. Then came the message that silenced even the loudest voices: another warship had appeared. This one larger, darker, stranger. The fleets that saw it swore it was not the same as the first. Different shape, different shadow, but the same crushing presence. The galaxy now knew that Earth had more than one. The Council's panic deepened into despair. If Earth had 2, they likely had 10. If they had 10, they might have hundreds. No one knew where the warships were built, how they were powered, or how they could even exist. All they knew was that they were real, and they were spreading. A voice of reason tried to calm the room, insisting that communication must be established, that Earth must be forced into dialogue, but fear drowned him out. Too many remembered the first message: "Do not test us." That was not an invitation to talk. That was a line drawn in the void. The panic turned into paranoia. Some leaders whispered that Earth had allies hidden among the Council races, that spies were already in the chamber, feeding humanity secrets. Others claimed the ships were not human at all, that humanity had bonded with something older, something from the dark beyond known space. Desperation made every theory believable. The chamber shook with shouts, alliances breaking, threats flying, and yet none of them dared send fleets forward. They spoke of war, but their fleets were already retreating. They spoke of courage, but their eyes betrayed fear. For the first time in history, the Council faced a power none of them understood, and in that moment, they felt small. The dark matter warships had not fired on the Council, had not destroyed a single homeworld, yet the leaders of the galaxy were already in chaos. Humanity had revealed nothing more than shadows and silence, and still, the Council panicked like prey sensing a predator in the dark. The session ended with no decision, no plan, only fear. As the chamber lights dimmed and the leaders departed to their own worlds, one thought echoed in every mind: if this was only the beginning, what would Earth show next? The rumors began almost immediately after the second warship appeared. Fleets patrolling near human borders claimed they saw more shapes moving in the void, dark shadows gliding through space that could not be tracked or locked onto. Some captains swore they counted 5, others said 10, and a few whispered there were hundreds waiting beyond the edge of the system. The galaxy had no proof, but the fear spread faster than fact. Every flicker on a scanner, every distortion in the stars, every unexplained reading was taken as evidence that another phantom ship was near. Panic grew in the fleets, soldiers losing sleep, captains refusing to patrol too close to human space, commanders sending frantic reports that their sensors were being jammed by shadows. The truth was worse than rumors. The shadows always seemed to vanish when studied, as if they were deliberately playing with the galaxy, letting themselves be seen and then melting back into darkness. The council tried to dismiss the sightings, but the whispers could not be silenced. Entire sectors claimed to be haunted by phantom ships, silent predators gliding unseen through the stars. Merchant routes collapsed, with traders refusing to enter human space. Worlds once thriving with commerce became quiet, afraid that a dark matter fleet might appear without warning. What frightened them most was the silence from Earth. No message came, no denial, no explanation, only the shadows. Some believed the humans were testing the galaxy, spreading fear to weaken their resolve. Others believed the Phantom Fleet was not human at all, that it was something else hiding behind Earth, some ancient force humanity had allied with. Fear made every possibility sound true. Fleets tried to prove their courage, sending scouts into the shadows, but those scouts rarely returned. The ones that did came back broken, their voices shaking, their minds shattered by what they had seen. They spoke of being surrounded, of dozens of ships moving silently, watching them, feeding on their fear. One scout whispered that the shadows had passed through his ship without firing, that he felt the cold of death brush across his skin, and yet he lived only because the shadows allowed him to. His words spread like wildfire. If the Phantom Fleet chose to let them live, then it could also choose to end them at any time. The galaxy understood then that numbers no longer mattered. 1,000 fleets would mean nothing if every ship could be silenced without a fight. The Phantom Fleet was not just a weapon, it was a strategy, a psychological war fought without a single shot. And the galaxy was losing. In council halls, leaders argued whether the phantom sightings were real, but deep down they all knew the truth. Too many reports, too much fear, too many soldiers refusing to fight. The phantoms were real, and they were everywhere. Some called for surrender, to bow before Earth before the shadows swallowed them all. Others demanded an attack, to force the truth into the open, but even the most aggressive empires could not gather the courage to march into the dark. The Phantom Fleet had done nothing but exist, and already the galaxy was paralyzed. And then, one night in deep space, an entire squadron vanished. No explosion, no distress signal, no wreckage, only silence. The fleet had been patrolling near the edge of human territory when their signals suddenly went dark. Search missions were sent, but nothing was found. The stars themselves seemed untouched, as if the ships had been erased from reality. The council demanded answers, but there were none. No one could prove what happened, yet everyone believed the same thing: the Phantom Fleet had taken them. The fear grew unbearable. Every admiral knew that if the Phantoms could erase a squadron without being seen, they could erase fleets, they could erase empires, they could erase the galaxy itself. Humanity never spoke, but they didn't need to. Their silence was the weapon, their shadows were the fleet, and the galaxy could do nothing but wait in fear. The Phantom Fleet was real, and the stars would never feel safe again. The galaxy had waited in fear for weeks, fleets holding their ground, council members arguing without answers, but at last one empire broke the silence. They were proud, old, and arrogant, convinced that their weapons could destroy anything, even the shadows humanity had built. Their fleet was massive, hundreds of warships armed with the deadliest cannons in known space, engines burning like suns as they advanced toward the edge of human territory. They broadcasted their intent across every channel, declaring to the galaxy that they would prove humans were liars, that the Phantom Fleet was nothing but illusions. Their arrogance gave them confidence, but deep down their soldiers felt the same fear as all others. As the fleet entered the dark void, silence fell. The stars ahead seemed to bend, constellations shifting as though space itself was alive. Then, from the darkness, a single warship appeared. It was the same as before, a shadow of impossible size, a shape darker than the void, bending starlight around its body. The arrogant fleet did not hesitate. With one command, every ship unleashed its firepower. Cannons roared, missiles streaked through space, beams of pure energy lit the void like a storm of suns. The galaxy watched the feed in silence, waiting for the shadow to be destroyed. But nothing happened. The explosions vanished as they touched the dark matter hull, the beams bent into nothing, the missiles dissolved into silence. The great attack, the combined strength of an empire, had simply disappeared as if the warship had swallowed it whole. Panic spread instantly. Captains screamed, weapons recharged, volleys fired again, but the result was the same: every shot consumed, every weapon silenced. Then the warship moved. Slowly, carefully, like a predator choosing its prey. Its shadow stretched across the arrogant fleet, and the ships closest began to fail. Lights died, engines cut, weapons fell silent, as if a hand of darkness had closed around them. One cruiser vanished from sensors completely, erased in a blink without fire or sound, gone as if it had never existed. The fleet broke into chaos. Some captains tried to retreat, others begged for orders, but the silence from command ships told the truth: the leaders themselves were frozen with fear. And then, without warning, an entire world went dark. The Empire's forward colony, a planet rich with life, filled with cities, vanished from every scanner. One moment it was there, glowing with signals, with voices, with light, and the next it was gone. No explosion, no destruction, no wreckage, only silence. The council chamber erupted when the news spread. Some screamed that Earth had crossed the line, that the dark matter warships were not just threats but destroyers of worlds. Others whispered that it was worse, that the planet had not been destroyed but pulled somewhere else, trapped in the void forever. The soldiers of the arrogant empire had no courage left. Their fleet scattered, engines burning at full speed, commanders abandoning formation, desperate to escape the silent predator that hovered behind them. The warship did not chase. It did not need to. The damage was done. The galaxy had seen it. They had watched an empire's strongest fleet fail without leaving a scratch. They had watched a planet disappear without sound. Fear became truth. Earth's warships were invincible, untouchable, and merciless when tested. From that day, no empire dared to fire first again. The first clash had ended before it began, and the galaxy knew that the shadows did not bluff. They were real, and they were death. After the clash, the galaxy tried to recover, but silence lingered like a shadow that never left. Fleets retreated to safer borders, empires reinforced their defenses, and the council gathered again, but no one could agree on what to do. The destruction of the arrogant empire's fleet and the vanishing of their colony world had shaken every leader. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt powerless. Then the whispers began. Pilots on patrol reported strange voices when they drifted too close to human space, not on the radio but inside their own helmets, in their own minds. Some said the voices spoke in human language, others swore they heard their native tongue, promises and warnings both. The words were never the same, but the message was clear. Leave, do not cross the line, do not test us again. At first the council dismissed the reports as fear, the ramblings of soldiers under stress, but then more and more voices came forward. Entire crews reported hearing the same whispers together, words carried through the silence of space. Some claimed the voices belonged to humans, others said they were something older, deeper, like the echo of the void itself. A rumor spread that the ships were not only weapons but alive, creatures of dark matter that humanity had somehow bent to their will. Some believed humans had merged their minds with the shadows, becoming part of them, guiding them with thought alone. The fear turned into obsession. Empires tried to send probes, but none returned. Others attempted to capture the signals, but the whispers never appeared on recordings. Only living minds heard them, and only when the warships allowed it. Soldiers who heard the voices described them with terror. Some fell to their knees in worship, convinced they had heard gods, others screamed and begged never to return to that sector. The council demanded an explanation from Earth, but again no response came. Humanity stayed silent, letting fear grow. Then a message appeared across the networks of an entire sector. Not a broadcast from a ship, not a signal from Earth, but a sudden flash of text on every screen, every console, every device. It said only 4 words. You were warned once. No one knew how the message was sent. The networks were secure, encrypted, impossible to breach without access, yet somehow the dark matter fleet had spoken through them all. Panic spread as commanders demanded ships to stand ready, but no attack came. Instead the shadows appeared again, drifting silently in the void near border worlds, never firing, never striking, only watching. Whispers returned stronger, voices repeating warnings, sometimes threats, sometimes strange promises that made no sense. One captain swore the voice told him his own future, another claimed it spoke the name of his dead child, a secret no one else could know. The fear became unbearable. Whole fleets refused orders, retreating without permission. Trade collapsed in regions near Earth, merchants too afraid to travel where the shadows might be. Empires turned on each other, accusing rivals of helping humanity, of feeding them resources, of secretly joining their fleet. Distrust spread faster than truth, and the council itself began to fracture. Through it all humanity stayed silent, their warships drifting like ghosts, their whispers haunting the galaxy. What terrified them most was that the voices were not lies. Every promise of punishment was kept, every warning proved true. Ships that ignored the whispers vanished, worlds that mocked the warnings went dark. The galaxy now understood that the dark matter fleet was not just a weapon of steel, it was a weapon of fear, of the mind, of silence and whispers that broke courage before battles even began. And as the council tried to hold together what little unity remained, a single question haunted them all. If Earth's warships could speak inside their minds, how much deeper could they go? The galaxy had always been divided, but never had it been this broken. After the whispers, after the vanishing fleets, after the warnings that came without sound or signal, fear spread like a plague. Armies that once marched with pride now trembled at the edge of human space. Worlds that had mocked humanity now closed their borders, shutting down trade routes, pulling their fleets inward as if walls of steel could protect them from shadows that moved like thoughts. The council tried to demand order, but no one listened, not anymore. Empires that had once led the stars now ordered retreats, pulling back their forces to protect their own worlds instead of defending the galaxy as a whole. It began slowly at first, one fleet withdrawing, another delaying its patrols, but soon it became unstoppable. Entire sectors went silent, abandoned as soldiers refused to risk the phantom warships. Starports once filled with merchants now stood empty, navigation charts marked vast stretches of space as forbidden, and whispers spread that humanity had surrounded the galaxy without firing a shot. Soldiers carried the fear with them, their stories twisting into legends. They spoke of ships that bled shadows, of eyes hidden in the void, of voices that crawled into dreams long after leaving the patrols. Some claimed to see phantom warships even in safe space, far from Earth, shapes that vanished the moment others looked. Whether real or imagined, the fear was enough. The retreat grew into collapse. Empires that had ruled for thousands of years suddenly shrank, their borders pulled back to core worlds. Alliances shattered as each race chose to protect itself instead of standing together. Old enemies reignited wars, seeing weakness in rivals too busy fearing Earth to fight back. The galaxy fractured into smaller pieces, every empire retreating into silence. What made it worse was humanity's silence. They gave no speech, no demand, no explanation. They did not declare war, nor peace, nor conquest. They only watched. Their dark matter warships appeared at random, drifting silently near abandoned outposts, hovering above border worlds without firing, simply reminding the galaxy that they were always there. Each time a ship appeared, another retreat began. The galaxy learned that silence was more terrifying than battle. With battle there was hope, the chance to fight, to resist, to survive. But with silence there was nothing, only the certainty that one mistake could bring destruction. The council tried to rally courage, sending messages of unity, but their fleets were already gone. Captains refused orders, admirals pretended communications had failed, and soldiers deserted to their homeworlds. In the void where proud armadas once stood, only shadows remained. The galaxy froze itself with fear, retreating without being chased, surrendering without a war. And as the last fleets pulled back, as sectors went dark and worlds abandoned hope, a single truth spread through every race, through every world, through every frightened soldier staring at the stars. Earth had not needed to conquer them. Earth had made them conquer themselves. The retreat should have ended in silence, but the galaxy was never free of ambition and fear together. When the fleets pulled back and the council lost control, whispers of rebellion grew inside the cracks. Some races hated the fear more than the enemy itself, and in that hate they turned their eyes not on humanity but on each other. Old rivals saw opportunity in the weakness of neighbors, empires whispered promises of protection and loyalty while secretly planning invasion, and merchants carried not only supplies but secrets across the shrinking lanes of trade. It began with one betrayal so small it should have been forgotten. A borderlord who sold his patrol routes to a rival in exchange for safety from the dark matter warships. His ships vanished soon after, but the rival never attacked. Instead, they spread the secret. The humans were watching, always watching, but they did not strike against traitors who sold their own people. This gave others an idea. Betray humanity and be destroyed, but betray your neighbor and perhaps you might live. The sickness spread quickly. Armies that once stood side by side now looked over their shoulders. Races that once called each other allies now sent spies, not to learn about the humans but to learn who would betray them next. Entire fleets defected to stronger empires, abandoning weak allies to save themselves. The council was paralyzed, unable to act because every order was met with suspicion. In the great chamber, voices rose louder, demanding punishment, demanding proof, demanding war against someone, anyone, to release the terror in their hearts. Yet no one dared speak against humanity, so instead they accused each other. The first betrayal became many, and soon worlds burned, not by human hands but by their own. Civil wars ignited on the edges of frightened empires, puppet rulers sold their planets to rival powers, and leaders were murdered by their closest advisors. Each betrayal carried the same lie. It was better to rule under another empire than to vanish under humanity's shadow. The galaxy tore itself apart in secret while pretending to retreat in unity. And humanity watched. Their dark matter warships drifted on the edge of vision, silent and untouchable, never interfering, never striking. Every betrayal that unfolded was another proof that fear itself was enough. Some races whispered that perhaps this had been humanity's true weapon all along, not the warships themselves but the silence they carried. The more the galaxy betrayed itself, the stronger Earth became without firing a single shot. It was a war of shadows, and the galaxy was losing. Yet not all betrayals came from fear, some came from greed. In the hidden reaches of space, a powerful empire made its choice. Tired of retreat, tired of bowing to shadows, it betrayed the fragile council completely. Their fleets moved not against humans but against their allies, crushing those who had trusted them. In secret, they believed they could steal what humanity had built, that if they captured the technology of the dark matter warships they would control the stars. It was a gamble, one born of arrogance and desperation, but it spread fire across the galaxy. Betrayal was no longer whispers and secrets, it became open war. The galaxy bled, but still humanity did not move. They allowed the betrayal to burn, they allowed the galaxy to fight itself, and still their phantom warships lingered like ghosts in the dark. Every race wondered the same thing: when would humanity strike? Would they wait until the galaxy destroyed itself, or would they only need to lift a finger when there was nothing left to resist? Fear deepened into despair, and the greatest betrayal was not against each other but against hope itself. The stars that once shone with unity now burned with suspicion, and the galaxy froze not because of Earth's warships, but because of the betrayals they had unleashed in silence. The galaxy was bleeding from its own wounds when the warning came, and it came not from human lips but from the silence of the void itself. For months the dark matter warships had drifted at the edges of vision like phantoms watching but never striking, and some began to believe perhaps they were only guardians waiting to see the galaxy collapse. But then one night a fleet of traitors chasing their rivals entered a forgotten sector near the edge of human space. They wanted to use it as a shortcut, a path to surround their enemy, but instead they found something else. They never returned whole. What little pieces drifted back through broken ships carried messages carved into their very hulls, as if the metal itself had been burned by a force beyond reason. And written in that burned steel was a single phrase, repeated again and again in a dozen languages: "This is your warning." The council gathered in panic once more, but this time there were no arguments, no accusations, only fear. They had seen many betrayals and many wars, but never had humanity spoken so directly. Every race asked the same question: what did the warning mean? Was it a threat, a demand, or a final mercy? For the first time the galaxy understood that the silence of the warships had been its own language, and now humanity had chosen to speak in fire. Rumors spread faster than light. Some claimed the warning was for all, that humanity was giving the galaxy one last chance to stop tearing itself apart. Others claimed it was personal, a message aimed only at the Empire that had betrayed the Council openly, daring to steal human secrets. But the most terrifying rumor of all was the simplest, that the warning was not about the present but the future, that the real war had not yet begun, and that when it did there would be no more warnings. Fleets trembled at the edge of their space, leaders whispered in hidden rooms, and every betrayal that had seemed clever now looked like suicide. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, as if the warning had reached into their light. In desperation the Council sent envoys to Earth begging for answers, but the envoys never returned, and their ships were later found drifting, untouched, their systems erased, as if humanity had not destroyed them but had simply erased them from existence. The message was clear: there would be no negotiation, only obedience. The betrayal had awakened something in Earth, and now the galaxy realized too late that they were not dealing with conquerors but with judges. The warning was not just carved into steel, it was carved into the fate of every world, and as the Phantom Fleet moved again, slow, deliberate, unstoppable, the galaxy knew this was the last moment to choose. Unite or be erased. The silence had ended, and the warning had begun. The galaxy waited for fire, but what came instead was silence, and that silence was heavier than any weapon humanity could build, because after the warning, after the fleets vanished, and after the phantom warships crossed the stars, there was no battle, no clash, only a stillness that wrapped every world in fear. The traitors who had betrayed Earth no longer sent signals, their planets no longer answered calls, and their fleets were gone as if the void itself had swallowed them whole, and when explorers tried to search their systems they found only wreckage drifting cold through dark space. There were no survivors, no screams, no final transmissions, just absence, and absence itself became the loudest sound in the galaxy. The Council convened once again in a chamber filled with shaking hands and lowered eyes, no one daring to speak of war now, because they knew the truth: Earth had not come to negotiate, Earth had not come to conquer, Earth had come to judge. The dark matter warships hung at the edges of space like shadows, always there, always watching, and though they never fired again, their silence was a command stronger than any threat. Trade routes slowed as fear spread and whispers filled the stars. Some said humanity had given mercy by not destroying all others, while some said the mercy was temporary, that one more betrayal, one more act of arrogance would awaken the fleet again. Leaders of once proud empires now spoke humbly, promising unity and peace, but their words were not for each other, they were for Earth, hoping the silent warships would hear and approve. Children in faraway colonies grew up with stories not of heroes and victories, but of the silence after the warning, stories told in whispers about the day the stars went quiet because Earth had spoken. And in that silence the galaxy changed. Old enemies signed pacts not out of trust but out of fear. Whole empires dismantled their secret weapons programs, knowing that no secret could hide from humanity's eyes, and even pirates and raiders abandoned their ways because one rumor said a single human warship had erased an entire pirate haven without firing a shot, simply appearing then vanishing, leaving behind only silence. Humanity never explained their actions, never sent messages, never attended the Council again, but everyone knew the lesson. The galaxy had been given one chance, one warning, and in the aftermath, all who remained lived under that shadow. Yet some whispered of something deeper, of a greater silence, not yet heard, that humanity's warships were not just guardians, but something older, something tied to the dark matter itself, and that perhaps Earth had not built them at all, but found them waiting, sleeping beneath the fabric of the universe. No one dared to ask aloud. Generations would pass and still the silence would remain, and though no warships appeared for many years, the galaxy never forgot the silence after, for it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of judgment, and every world knew one truth carved into their memory: the stars were only quiet because Earth allowed them to be.